Welcome to Life Force Canada. I am Karen of the family Klassen. Now we know there's a lot of truth that's being revealed that can make you feel angry and frustrated and be a sense of betrayal, such as when you realize how Mickey Mouse was making holes in the cheese. Or when we realize how the moment you sign for your mortgage, it's already paid for. Same with our vehicle, and so on and so on and so on. As Brennan Joe Williams shares, we have discovered that we've been buried deep in the ground in a graveyard and we're digging ourselves out of it. And I add that we're here to resurrect ourselves, to stand tall in the light of our own awakening, of our own soul force, our life force. Each one of us is being called to step into self-governance. And this is all about self-reliance and, of course, self-leadership. As you are here to lead your own life out of the hell we've been in, such as the lies and the manipulation that have kept the majority of humanity in fear and not knowing thyself, and into creating pockets of heaven so that we can be free and prosperous. Self-leadership is not an easy journey. However, it's a necessary one if you are to be free from any government control. And that is why I have asked Bill Chalmers here to join us this evening. Just a little bit about Bill. Of course, everyone knows he's been a member of Life Force Canada. Him and Esther both live in Surrey, BC. As an artist, author, and highly sought after speaker, facilitator, and coach, Bill has gained the respect of businesses and not-for-profit communities with his resourceful insights into communication dynamics, building on over 5 decades of successful entrepreneurial ventures. He dedicated himself to making a difference in the arena of leadership, transformational change, and strategic management. His amazing sense of humor, open generosity, and inspirational charisma are foundations for his delivery of outstanding results. He speaks with substance, brilliance, and sometimes frightening candor, always with his clients' best interests at heart. He's become a dear friend of mine as well. We welcome you, Bill.
Delighted to be here. Thanks. That sounded like my mom wrote that, so that's really good.
Grateful to
All
have
right.
you.
All right, we're going to dive in. I want to do just a couple of things here that are slightly different than what we've done in the past work in Life Force Canada. 2 quotes. An effective leader does not accept the status quo as the best future. And we're a bit thrown as human beings to actually, we'd rather be right than effective. So that drives almost all of us. I don't like it when somebody pushes back on me when I think all they had to do is accept what I'm saying. It's genius, leave me alone. And that doesn't actually make that communication very effective. I'm not showing the leadership that needs to be. And you can't change anything unless you make room for real disruption. Nothing has happened in any, it doesn't matter, scientific stuff or anything else. Nothing has ever happened that didn't cause a disruption to begin with. So I want to start with a story all of you know. I'm only going to give a thread of it, but you'll remember a bunch of it. Alice through the looking glass. She wasn't having a good day. First, she followed a white rabbit who was more interested in time management than real leadership. Following someone like that's always a danger. They're usually so worried about the appearance of things that they forget what they were trying to do. And can you say, politicians? I'll leave it at that. Anyway, Alice followed the rabbit with his large pocket watch and ended up in a deep hole with a whole new array of difficulties, which is usually the way that that sort of thing works out. Then she met a caterpillar who may or may not have been on controlled substances, and we think that Lewis Carroll probably was to have written this. That's a separate conversation, not sure, but it did create some insights for us. It was a trendy thing, doing a little bit of magic mushroom. Try it. Everyone else did. So she did it, and you know parts of the story. She all the big things and the little things. So she did, And the next thing she knew, she was too big for her shoes and frightened everybody around her. Then she tried another trendy solution, and suddenly she was too small to accomplish much. Of course, the high point of her day came when she met the Cheshire Cat. Most of us meet a Cheshire Cat sooner or later. She found him perched in a tree at a crossroad, and she said, "Which road should I take?" she asked the cat. "Well, where do you want to go?" the cat replied helpfully. "Well, I don't know," admitted Alice. "Well, then, any road will take you there." And that's what I believe we are caught in today's world. The Cheshire Cat could probably publish a book on management today and appear on all the television talk shows, The Leadership Secrets of the Cheshire Cat, and it doesn't get us anywhere. It feels a bit stuck. I think the most important question here is, if you won't lead, then who will? And so we're going to talk about leadership, probably from a perspective you may not have thought of, but I'm going to poke the bear a little bit, have some fun, because the premise of everything we're doing is, what do we do to be in peace in a place that it's just chaos and we don't even know how to try to settle that? Yevgeny Zamyatin, his quote goes like this: "Progress is not achieved by preachers and guardians of morality. Instead, it is created by madmen, hermits, heretics, dreamers, rebels, and skeptics." So, which group do you want to be in? Because if you're going to opt for the madmen, hermits, heretics, dreamers, rebels, and skeptics, we could be in some trouble with the common good and the status quo. Do you relish the transgression, deeply and instinctively distrust conformity and orthodoxy? We have to get to the place where we're no longer content with that status quo conversation. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the elements of, well, in fact, let's start with this. In the chat, I'd like you to do this. I've got 2 questions for you. I have them here somewhere. Yes, 1-word answers. I don't want a paragraph. I don't want a diatribe. I don't want you telling me all the things that have happened in your life over the course of the last 12 years. 1-word answer. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you just to pop a word into the chat. What is the top attribute of a good leader? I know you've got more than one, but pick one and type it into the chat so we can have a quick look at it. And Esther are going to have a quick boo. Courage is there. Listening, that's an important one. How do you do that as a listener, as a leader, when you're at the front? Communication, trustworthy. Are you trustworthiness, compassion, honesty, empathy? Oh, yeah, that's great. Now, if we could there's honesty, consciousness, bold, visionary, sincerity. Okay, those are great. Now, here's the context. Is it possible that some of our leaders aren't doing this? Somebody put empowering others. That's not one word, but I'm good with that. Empowering others. That's great. Authentic, being authentic. Do you sometimes think, even people in charge of large corporations, does it feel sometimes like they're not being authentic? Yeah. Okay, here's the next question. So we're out, just leave that for now. And we are going to save the chat. What seems to be missing with many or most of our leaders today? And you can start anywhere you want. It can be in our schools, it can be in our churches, it can be politically, it can be provincially, all over the world. What seems to be missing with many or most of our leaders today? We've got the same list. They seem to be missing respect and authenticity. Oh, isn't that great? Look at that. And I think the coolest part that, they're not questioning they're not questioning the status quo. I think what's really cool about those 2 lists is, if we were to grab those lists, and we don't have time, I'm only going to be speaking for a half hour, 35 minutes. If we were to grab those lists and give them to managers of companies, if the managers of the companies, who are theoretically our leaders in those organizations, if they can't figure out a way to put money into that game, how do I capitalize on that? How do I monetize compassion? And the challenge is, we're looking for our leaders to provide those things for us that are virtually impossible to monetize in the short term, which is sobering. Because I can tell you, in the long term, Whether you like the faith or the religion of Grandma Moses or Mother Teresa, they made a difference because they allowed their compassion to show. And it only showed up after years. Again, you don't have to like the faith, but you can look at it and go, did they make a difference? And the context is compassion can't be measured quarterly. It's just not possible. So what happens, because we're so caught as leaders in this world, because the world is in chaos, and from a leadership point of view, it really is challenging. What do I do with this? How do I move this organization forward? Especially, I mean, if you look at coaches, let's just do a little rabbit hole for a sec. Coaches in sports, a couple of them just got fired. One got fired because his wife is sick with cancer and he wanted to take a leave of absence. So instead, they fired him and they wrote him a check for $65 million so he can go away. I don't know many leaders in the medical field. Oh, we only had 3 people die last week, so let's give him 10 grand. Like, it doesn't work that way. We are really accountable for many of the things that come out or are supposed to come out under our leadership. So he gets let go. And then we've got this dilemma that goes over the whole sports model. Where do we get our next coach? And I want you to think about this, just this a little bit of a twist. The place to get the coach for your team after you've let go of your coach is a whole bunch of coaches who've been fired. Okay, that just doesn't make sense. If they were not good enough for that team, how can they be good enough for this team? So it's a bit of a problematic model. So let's look at the first slide I've got. It's a conversation about where do we stand as leaders? I think that's the first one. Yeah. So here's what we're up against. Failure to see other people's points of view. When they did this study, Schulman Research, which has done stuff for years, 7,300 people, and they asked this question: what are the most serious faults of executives in dealing with their associations and subordinates, or their associates and subordinates? Failure to see the other's point of view. You mentioned that. You mentioned that in terms of compassion, seeing the other perspective. 68% of their leaders didn't do that. Failure to show appreciation or give credit. So the leader takes the job, gets people to help, and then takes credit for the job. Over a third do that. Failure to size up the employees correctly. That just means looking to see, is this the right person? Is this the best consultant? Are we able to course correct? Again, over a third don't do that. Lack of leadership. They're even saying that the people that are in charge are so bad at leadership, a quarter of them are not doing their job. Arbitrariness. So this is where you show the little favoritism stuff, which is pathetic. I'll let you get away with it, but I won't let them get away with it. Arrogance. Failure to delegate authority. So this is where you're hanging on to that power. Indecision. Bias and letting emotions rule. And this is a big one, because this is back to almost a quarter. The miscellaneous includes lack of courtesy, sarcasm, jealousy, nervousness, losing temper. Just look at those attributes, those places where we're looking at our leaders going, what has happened? And we can't trust media. We can't trust our leaders. We can't trust, again, even in small corporations. I had to help a company years ago, and it was the most hilarious thing I've ever done as a coach, because it was a company that does what's called traffic calming. Now that sounds like it would make sense. By the way, that's part of the name of their company. That their job is to slow down traffic enough that it can be calmed and it doesn't cause aggravation. So I want you to think back in your time when you've had to drive over speed bumps, no matter where you were, and tell me how calm you were about the speed bump that did exactly what it was supposed to do, slow you down. Anybody happy to drive over speed bumps? I know people with sports cars that can't drive straight over a speed bump because it drags their exhaust pipe on the road. They're not doing what they need to do. How do you calm traffic when you just slow it down and annoy drivers? So that's kind of an interesting premise to work on. Let's go to the next one, Esther. Please and thank you. I'm holding that leadership is actually a verb, not a noun. He's a good leader is a noun. I want to see what your leadership is doing and being. Leadership is action. not a position. I am a leader, therefore X. No, it's you in action. I want to see what that looks like. Leadership's defined by what we do, and this is the biggie, how we be, not by the role we play. Because lots of people, and this is where, again, we've lost sight of how to even groom our leaders. We've got a car dealership. There's 6 salespeople, men and women. They're great, doing a job, and they promote the best salesperson for the job, the salesman or the saleswoman who knocks it out of the park. And they do a terrible job of leading because they haven't been trained. They know how to sell cars, but they're not selling cars anymore. They're helping the people sell cars, and they don't know how to do that. That's where the favoritism comes in and everything else, because we've come up with this crazy model, which, by the way, is tied to unions, because that goes back to black hands and red hands and all that stuff back in the 18th and 19th century, where longevity gets you your, imagine you work 50 years for the company and they give you a watch to retire. Like, the last thing you're going to be doing when you're retired is carrying around your watch. Like, that makes no sense, but we built it into the culture. It's not a role, it's a verb. How do I lead? And there's 4 seasons of change in how this all works. The first one is when someone hurts enough. That's why in lots of cases where we are in the freedom movement, in the place where we are collectively on the call today, it hurt enough, we have to do something about it. So that's not bad. That's a good thing. And when you know that, when you can increase that pain, and there's nothing wrong with pain, as long as it's not forever and ever and it grinds you down. But a pain bump lets you reevaluate what's going on here. And then when they see enough, like, and when you're totally embroiled in it, like we look at what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years, they just accepted it. We, as a collective, and I think it was not the percentages we were told. We see enough, okay, that's got to stop. Then we're inspired to do something about it because we've now just seen something that went, oh, you got to be kidding. We learn enough. We go online, and it doesn't matter if you buy the premise of what you're going online for, or you're talking to people, or you're reading books, or you're listening to podcasts. The key becomes, is that data helping me be way more effective to lead? And we can lead. I had to do this with my daughter, which was beyond hilarious. She's now she's 49. And she was dating somebody. And this guy, I kind of, you know how moms and dads, I kind of had a suspicion that he really wasn't that keen on being in a long-term relationship. She seemed like a pretty good person to climb into bed with. And so I was worried about it. And I can't say that to my daughter because it's the dad who's overprotective and all that stuff. And I said, well, I just would like to meet with him. And the 3 of us can just sit down and talk. Can we do that? Oh, sure. Because Julie's really sold on this guy. So she mentions to him, he is not interested in meeting me. He's, that I'm probably the gate guy, gatekeeper. Anyway, Julie wanted to know why I wanted to meet him. I said, I just want to know what his integrity is and what he's up to. And we never met. And she disengaged from him. So I thought that was pretty good. That triggered something because I had a sense that she didn't have, because she's naive, she's innocent. And so there was a context there. She started now using me as the filter. And I did not know about that for 2 years. If the guy showed interest in her, she would say, yeah, well, come on home and meet my dad. We'll see how it goes. So that's leadership. And it wasn't dadship. It was, I needed to help her in some way without it looking like dad was filtering everything. And she met a great guy. She's still married to him. It's kind of cool. And then when we receive enough, when someone gifts to us, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be goods, services, just being in our lives to support us and love us. That can make a difference for us to step up to the plate. And there is also something magical about that, because as we do that, as we step into those things that we receive, it actually expands us to go to a place that many times I didn't think I would do that, or you didn't think you would have done that, but here you are doing it. So people change for those reasons. And frankly, those are it. Those are the only reasons that'll trigger people. Warren Bennis, Bless this guy, by the way, he's one of the most powerful leaders that we've ever seen and heard in our world. And so for him, the context of leadership fell into four categories. And here's the categories. Competence. You probably know what that means. You got to be good at something. And by the way, that doesn't mean you have to be good at leading. You just need to be competent. One of the best examples of it is again, you don't have to like the guy. He backed the Nazis in the Second World War, and he provided them equipment and trucks, and even kicked in money for tanks. Separate conversation. He was a good leader, and here's what happened in 1908. His board decided they didn't like him very much, and they tried to remove him. And remember, it's a private company, but he's got some people there that don't agree with what he's doing, and they've taken him to court, and he's in court with them. It's not pretty. And he finally says, because it's evident to them that he has no idea how to do all the things that his people are doing, which was true. So he said, could we meet back in my office, bring the 12 jurors with me, and I will answer every question you ask me. And if at the end of that conversation you want me out, I will leave willingly. So they reconvened in his office, 12 jurors, the judge is there, prosecutor, and they asked him a question. How do you take that transmission out? And he goes on his intercom. He goes, Tom, could you come on up? He gets Tom up. Tom tells the tale of how they can change that transmission. They ask another question, and it goes on and on and on. They ask every single question, and he's got an answer for it, but it's not Henry Ford's answer. It's his staff. It's his people. It's his leaders. They can answer that for him. As a leader, we need to do more of that. If we look at what's happened with the moral breakdown in terms of some of our spiritual leaders, they didn't pass the torch. And I can list off, you know them, list off names of really good leaders. If you like that style of religion or like that faith, they were good leaders, and they didn't pass the torch to their sons because they didn't let go, or their daughters. They didn't do it, and they didn't allow good competence around you. If you're a good leader, you should have people around you who are better at all of the jobs that you have to lead for. They should be better at it in whatever that context is. And the second C was congruence. So is what I'm saying and doing, we went back to this in the earlier slide, when we're doing and being, is it congruent? How many times have you heard a leader say something and then do something else? If you're going to preach that you need to pay your taxes, then you better pay your taxes. If you're going to preach that you shouldn't pay your taxes and you do, that's incongruent. So if you're going to take a stand, and this is where a big challenge comes in our world right now, because it's polarized. We're in a situation where some of us, and we found this out over the course of the last few years, some of the friends we thought were friends aren't. And it has to be okay. Because if they're friends with a mask, or you're friends with a mask, that they were saying this and this and this and this, and then the world took a shift and they don't like the position you're in, we need to be more effective at, there's a good phrase for this. It'll come to me. But congruence is so important. It needs to be that your word is your law. Your word is your bond. You're saying what you believe completely in your heart, and you're working with people who can, by the way, you can be mentored up. Thanks for that, Brian. You can be mentored up and mentored down. There's nothing stopping you from learning something. There was a wonderful little story told about a young boy that had a lemonade stand, and he sold lemonade and lozenges. And somebody said, well, what's that? He said, well, the lemonade's $1 a glass and the lozenges are $15. And the guy comes up and he says, okay, I'll just take the lemonade. I don't need the lozenges. Well, the lemonade was filled with other things like salt and animal urine. So now it's not congruent. However, what he did, he sold all of his lozenges because people weren't happy with what they were drinking. Of course, I get it. He was congruent in being out there doing what his dad said, by the way, go make some money, but he wasn't congruent and ethical. So it's lots of balancing for everybody. After this is a old word. This is a word that is so important for us. Constancy. And we've lost sight of what constancy is. And I'm going to grab it here. I want to read I have it here somewhere. Here we go. Yes, constancy. The quality of being faithful and dependable. Faithful and dependable. The quality of being enduring and unchanging. I think in my experience, the arch of my work, going back to my first client in 1969, the arch of my work is being caught in this, and I think it is a mess of what's come out of COVID and figuring out a way through because it's chaos and there is no easy path. Winston Churchill said, when you find yourself in hell, keep walking. We need to keep walking. But the constancy for us to be enduring and unchanging, not in overthrowing the government. That's not the conversation. It's the parallel path conversation. You now got options. It's not an option in or out, because that's what we've been taught for 70 years. You're either with me or against me. It's not appropriate. It's not okay. So the context then comes. So if we put a parallel world in place that allows us to be free and equal, and that doesn't mean democratic. That's a whole other conversation. That's for another conversation down the road. That's not right now. But the context of constancy, being enduring and unchanging, being faithful, being dependable. You know, do you show up on Monday night and Tuesday night if you're with, whatever you're doing? You show up even if only 3 people are there and you talk to them. Yeah, that's dependability. You have to do that. And as your game grows, as that world grows, you have to get yourself to the place where, in Bennis's context of caring, that in fact is corporate love. That's how he's holding it. And you can't use that word because it's been co-opted in so many ways, but caring leadership. So I can pick on one person who's got one of the largest companies in the world. He's made hundreds of billions of dollars, and over 40% of his staff, the people that are on the front line, have to have 40% have 2 jobs and 20% have 3 jobs to be able to make enough money to feed their family. And if he gave up just $20 billion, sounds like a lot for us, but for him, not a lot of money. It's less than, I think it's less than 3% of his whole total. I'm talking about profit for last year. If he gave that up, all of those people could give up their second and third jobs. Okay, that's not caring, but it is constancy, if you think about it, through a very twisted filter. We need all 4 of these to actually put ourselves in a place where, with competence and congruence, constancy and caring, we can be gracious and graceful and leaders that can do it with ease. It's absolutely critical for us to be able to do this. The practices of exemplary leaders is really important. And we're in it. We might not be leading as powerfully and as effectively as we could, because frankly, we just got so tired and fed up with the whole thing that we just said, I got to do this. And so how do we do that? Because when, like what's happened in most of our countries around the world, if you challenge the process, you're in trouble. So the key then becomes, what would the opportunities be inside that process challenging? And are we willing to experiment? Because one of the challenges we face as leaders is we're not rewarded for experimenting. Richard Rohr, he's a Catholic priest, but he's got some great stuff around corporate environments. And he wrote a book called Failing Upward. Failing Upward. We need to do that. How can we know how to do it? And this is a problem. I can't speak for women on this, but certainly for men, because I've led some men groups and we've done some really deep background stuff on this. How can we, the very first time we try something, be really good at it? How can we do that? We can't. So we have to be able to fail at it so that we can get better at it. And many of us don't want to fail at anything. So for a bunch, again with men, they just stay home. They'd rather not exercise, because every time they go out and exercise, they do it too much. And then after doing it too much, now they're in trouble because they pull a hamstring or pull a muscle or they hurt themselves. Searching for opportunities and experimenting with possibilities. The coolest part about Life Force Canada is we are looking for those opportunities all the time. And on top of it, we're trying stuff. Some stuff's going to be brilliant and other stuff's not. Modeling the way. So we have to set an example. How do we do that? And again, listen to what happens when we talk about what are your wins. If you're a member uh, in good standing coming in on the Tuesday night calls, we open those calls with, so what's the win of the week? What did you do? And some of them are little wins. But some people who thought that was a little win, oh my goodness, it's a huge win because we've gotten something that we didn't anticipate. It maybe took 6 weeks, it took 9 weeks, doesn't matter. That win is being celebrated virtually around the world, certainly around Canada, the United States, as we all cheer this person and whatever little win they got, which included getting their stamps and like it's so much fun to share in those small wins. And we need to do that as leaders. We need to have a shared vision. Shared vision. If we're not careful, and this is what happens, even inside our freedom movement, whatever we want to describe that as a rubric, there's a bunch of stuff going on that feels a little weird because some people are trying to overthrow the government. Some people are trying to get their member of parliament out. Okay, I got it. And if that's what you need to do, do that. But make sure that the enclave that you got, the people that you've got around, are all on board for that. Because we're looking to create a future. But again, if you look at what's happened with the quote from Evgeny, it's the context. We got to be a little bit, and I'm saying this very loud. Is this being recorded?
Absolutely, it is.
Okay, then I'm not going to use the word. So the context is we need to do something that's outside the norm that destabilizes the status quo and show a way out of it or away from it. You can't just complain about what's not working. And this is the problem with some parents. They'll just tell her, because I said so was one of my dad's lines. Well, that's not good enough. I'm 14 years old and I've figured out the world. I've got it all settled. I don't need any more information. I'm 14 years old. Come on. And he says, well, you can't do that because I said so. It's not enough information. I need him to show me why that would be important for me to do that. Envisioning the future and enrolling. And this is not coercion. I'm in the midst of writing a book that I'm going to bring out in the fall. And it's a conversation about how much we're shamed to do self-improvement. You have to do self-improvement because you're not good enough as a person. You need to do this because you're not good enough at doing that, or you've failed miserably because you're not a multimillionaire. Oh, come on. What are those big wins? What are those things that bring me? There was a great conversation that one of my buddies, I was at this week-long writing retreat, and he asked his daughter, honey, let's go into town. I've got to pick something up. She said, I'd love to come. And she said to him, Dad, do you really love me more than anything else? And he's like, taken aback, 9 years old. And he said, well, of course. She said, well, would you give up your job if it would meant that I would be able to stay with you? He said, of course. They talked back and forth. Finally, she said, would you give up everything that you own and have me stay in your life? He says, absolutely, I would do that. And she said, well, I don't think I'd want to stay with you if you didn't have anything. So she flipped him on his ear. They had a great conversation. And then he got at what was underneath her question. Because at 9, she didn't know how to describe security. And that's all she was after. How do I be secure? And my dad will do everything and anything to be with me. Encouraging the heart. Again, we've talked about celebrating the accomplishments, but also recognizing contributions. And I wasn't brought in here to blow smoke on Karen of the Clausen family, but she acknowledges everybody that does anything in any context. Every week, she mentions to Karen and she mentions to LJ how she appreciates what they're doing. When we look at those accomplishments and we figure out, is that going to help us in our quest? And if the answer is yes, let's do it. And if it doesn't help in our quest, but it helps in the person's understanding of themselves and their own personal growth, it's still an accomplishment worth celebrating. And then the last thing, Supporting others to act. How best do we do this? Strengthening others. What do we need to put underneath them? It's part of, and this is not a sales pitch, it's part of what we're trying to do in every way that we possibly can in helping all of us get more effective in sharing our hearts, sharing this information, doing it in a way that creates elegance and grace and ease. We're doing that in July, and we'll also be doing it in September in a bunch of different both configurations and content. And then in the strengthening of others, developing collaboration, looking outside our own venues, our own people, and seeing where else we can create connections. That collaborative part is so important. When you look at how BC has fought with Surrey, Surrey wanted to do a certain police action, and the province said no, and the province took them to court and stopped it. That's not collaboration. And by the way, who's got the most power? Well, the province has got all the money. So, and Brenda Locke, bless her cotton picking socks. She's pushing so hard, and she needs to do it a different way. Because what's happening is it's just created this polarization. Because if we don't collaborate, we will polarize. And the price we pay for polarization, we're in it. The world has been going this direction for about 130 years, if you look all the way back. And that's where we're kind of caught. So there is a place for us when we look at this exemplary leaders and what's so important for us. There's a book, there's a couple of books written by an organization called Leadership and Self-Deception. What's the name of the organization, Esther?
The Harbinger Institute.
Harbinger Institute, thank you. Yeah, the Harbinger Institute. Yes, they are Christian based. So if you can put that aside, suspend that conversation. They have written 2 books. Leadership and Self-Deception, which is how often we deceive ourselves as leaders. We think we're better than we are. And the second book is The Anatomy of Peace. And they have written a process by which they believe if this was followed, there would be no war left in the Middle East. It's pretty cool. And they've got Jewish people and Palestinians on the same team trying to figure it out. So that's cool. That's a collaboration conversation. So I'd like to open it up for questions about this if you would like. So if you've got any questions, fire them into the chat.
Thank you, Bill. This has been so great. I think we need to have more conversations in regards to leadership moving forward because it's such a necessary aspect of our lives right now. And you're brilliant at what you share. I'm just going to actually move it over here to open forum gallery. Bill, could you share a little bit more about what you're going to be offering July 13th and 14th in Calgary with Esther?
What are we doing there? Stand and deliver a 1 day and then a facilitation workshop. Is that correct? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we're gonna be in the place where we'll get you, believe it or not, within 1 day, we will actually get you comfortable being in front of people, 2, 3, 20, 10,000. We'll get you comfortable. We will teach your body things that you can do to be really effective in a room. That's so important in this world today. And we're going to figure out more powerful ways to facilitate crappy conversations, if nothing else. I mean, I've got a whole list of, this is how can I best say this? Yeah, these are how to deal with difficult people using politically incorrect language. Sherman tanks, clams, tap, it's people that can't shut off, can't shut them down. Bulldozers, somebody that's always cracking a joke. Critics, cynics, cheerleaders, they just can't seem to figure out where they need to be. Crust, I've been doing this for 33 years. Scientists, either it's been proven or it hasn't. Dude, guy that's slicker than oil. Staller, we're going to deal with those and figure out how do we facilitate that, because the key to those facilitations is no confrontation. And how do you do that with somebody that's trying to take you out? So we'll have some fun on those 2 days.
As we move forward, we've been saying this for some time now, that we all need to release our fears. And sometimes standing before another can bring up so much fear because we're not used to being in the light. We're used to hiding in the corners and allowing the government to control everything. And so we're being called now to get out of the dark room, out of the shadow and into the light, And one of the best ways to do that is what Bill's talking about here, and the July 13th, 14th event that we have in Calgary that both Bill and Esther are going to be facilitating. It's so powerful. And, you know, as our motto at Life First Canada is, right, the acronym of fear, face everything, and rise. That's what we need to do right now more than ever, so that all of us as freedom warriors, freedom lovers, we all get to truly stand in our power, stand in our heart, and wear that spiritual armor so that we can face that police officer whenever we're confronted by anyone of authority. Whether you are, you know, discharging your mortgage or discharging a credit card or whatever it is, one day there may be litigation that you're going to have to go to court, and you're going to want to practice what it means to stand in your power. And this is what Bill and Esther are really offering everyone, is to know that you have this incredible innate power within you, and to learn how to communicate that power. Extraordinary opportunity. It's just incredible. Please raise your hand if you have any questions or comments with Bill's exceptional presentation. Of course, I think that Bill would love to receive your love as well. Everything that you shared. Yes, Donna, exactly.
Now, if I can jump in also, and I think there's a place here. I understand how people want to use, because we are fighting a war. I'm not trying to diminish it in any way, but we are freedom magnets, we're freedom seekers, and we're freedom connectors. And if we went through that as the framework for what we're doing, and again, stay out of court if you can do it, move mountains to not have to go to court. But if you can do that, you're going to put yourself in a place where you're trying to encourage people to come towards you so we can figure it out. Karen,
I'm just going to give you guys a testimonial about Stand and Deliver. I had a fortunate experience in that I got to attend, and from somebody who has difficulty in getting their thoughts and words across to a room full of people, posture, projection of voice, confidence, all of that is built throughout the whole weekend. And now, over the last year and a half, I've gone to Trent University to do some talks with professors and faculty, and I'm able to, and I have successfully incorporated everything that I learned in that week to be able to stand in my own confidence as well as knowledge of information that I was passing on to these professors and faculty. So please, you know, if anything, go to this weekend. You will absolutely love it.
when I love it. You're just a doll. Appreciate it.
I love you.
Esther, go ahead.
I want to say that we create a safe space together. So if you're having any hesitation going, I don't want to speak in public because it's my least favorite thing ever, this is a safe space to take you from wherever you are to the next level. And although we had a wonderful time together on Zoom, there is nothing like being live and together in a room and being able to be body to body, eye to eye, and connecting our energies together. And whatever level you come at, you will leave at another level. No question. Thank you.
And it's all taking place in my home, the Life First Canada Education Center. Well, the Unlearning Center.
Winston Churchill said, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. And even with the word listen, if you just rearrange the letters, it means silent.
And just a reminder for people who live in, you know, outside of Alberta, we do have people flying in. We have one woman that's flying in from Quebec. There's a hotel right near my house, so it's only like 5 minutes, and we're going to be picking everybody up. So it's easy breezy, and you know, you can come to Calgary and make it a vacation as well. We've got a lot of freedom lovers here in this city, so it's going to be very, very special. Now, Bill, I have a question for you. As we're moving into self-governance, how do you see everyone in the freedom movement truly stepping into self-leadership? Like, what is the number one thing that's holding people back? Because it is a big step forward in self-reliance, etc. So what do you think the number one thing is that holds people back from stepping into true self-leadership?
Fear. We need to be fearless, because
Yeah.
the worst case is we fail. That's the worst case.
Hmm.
But what are we going to be failing at? Oh, because somebody thought we were an idiot? Really, I've been called worse from better people. That's a separate conversation as well. But the premise that we're on is you either believe in this and it sets you on fire, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't set you on fire, you have to ask yourself, do I belong here? Because
Hmm.
we need to be on fire for whatever we're doing. Even people who've had children that didn't expect them, that bump child or whatever they call them, they learn to love the child. They learn to figure out what to do with that. The same thing holds true with when other people come into your family. I mean, most families are kind of, my daughter keeps saying that she puts the fun and dysfunctional in the family. And it's absolutely true. She knows exactly how to lob a grenade and do all that kind of stuff, because that's what gives her significance. What's the significance for you in your life to be inside this tent to figure out how to help not just you, but other people? Because most of you, we're aging, so it's not as important to us, but it is important to the grandkids. And it doesn't matter which side of the fence they're on and everything that's going on. That's our job. I think it's a calling in lots of ways. Greg Lavoie wrote a great book called Callings. It's a struggle to read through because it really holds you accountable to yourself. And most of us don't even know how to do that. And to be a good leader, you've got to be accountable to yourself. You got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and go, okay, I spoke the truth to me today. I did the best I could. That's it. Fearless. Be fearless. Think about 2-year-olds. Did we ever have to teach a 2-year-old how to present something? Honey, could you get up and dance for us? Or could you play the accordion or whatever else? All the kids want to do it. Let me show you the new play I just made up. And they'll show you their little play. And then somewhere down the line, not very long down the line, by about the age of 5, we kind of beat it out of them because they're not conforming. So be fearless and unconforming. It won't kill you. And if it does, is it a cause worth dying for? You have to ask yourself. It's a big deal. I don't dispute that for a sec, but is this worth dying for?
Yes, I love that,
And that's
Bill.
huge. That's huge.
Thank you.
Claire and Carol, who's gonna take me on here?
Clarence.
Excellent. Go for it, Doc.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much, Bill. Great talk. Beautiful insight of putting it all together. And really, from the sounds of it, it's, if we're above the line, then we should be okay with that congruence and integrity and everything else. Just a plug for the weekend. I believe it's the last weekend of Stampede too. So someone could come in the day before if they wanted to and Stampede. And from what we understand, the water is going to be available again, so you don't have to worry about your showers. So that would be just an aside. But the question is, what you're going to be doing, you and Esther, this weekend or that weekend? Is it something that's going to make it so that we're going to be able to learn how to respond to instead of reacting? Is that going to be built into your weekend?
Totally. I think it's really critical. We tend, again, our whole teaching, the training that we've been under, the indoctrination is about kids should be seen and not heard, that kind of a thing. And that leaks right into our adult life. Again, I'm always surprised in adults. By the way, at the age of 12, my speech impediment was so bad that, and I'll tell a little story about this. My dad put marbles under my tongue so that I would stop stuttering. And I had tongue tied, all that stuff. And the joke of it is, each day that I got better at speaking, he would take a marble out. And by the time I lost my marbles, I was really good at and able to speak. So that was the inside family story. But we all have obstacles that are going to be in our world to do this. They're going to be in our life. And because of the indoctrination of everything that's happened around us, it's frightening. It is scary. I mean, I can be pulled over on the highway and I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong. Not, oh, I wonder why you pulled me over. How often do we just do that? We default to where the negative is. And what a response does for you rather than a reaction is you know what to do in that arena, and no matter what it is. It's even in a court. There are ways to deal with the courts, and learning all that. It's really important, but it can stand you apart from the crowd. And a win might be they throw it all out. Doesn't go away, except they just throw it out. Okay, nothing wrong with that. And you don't know what's going to happen. I had a situation where I did some work for a credit counsel business where they were really in trouble, and they didn't like what we found because we found 17 places of fraud. So I reported them, did the thing I needed to, and my lawyer, a guy named Barry Kirkham, who was amazing. He said that with lawyers they come with bows and arrows and howitzers, and he said, I'm not in that camp. I carry nuclear weapons. And he sent a letter to a lawyer to get him to cease and desist. And sad to say, the guy had a heart attack at his desk and died. It was that holy shit a letter. So there's a place, if again, in the leadership stuff we talked about, you surround yourself with people who are powerful and know what they're doing inside whatever's going on, and you trust them, then get out of the way and let chips fall where they may. Pretty powerful. I did not write nasty letters and kill somebody. That wasn't the idea at all. But by the way, that whole thing went away that fast. It was over. So there's a place that how do I respond is so much more important. It's what I describe as thermostat, thermometer consciousness. Thermostats are different than thermometers. You want to be a thermometer that reacts to the temperature in the room. I can check it. Oh, it's pretty hot in here. A lot of people are pissed off and upset. Or I come in as a thermostat, crank it down and say, okay, any questions? And now I'm a thermostat rather than a thermometer. Much more powerful to go through life that way. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you, Claire. Great question. Thanks, Bill. I just wanted to have you talk a little bit more about the 4 seasons of change. The first one you mentioned, when they hurt enough. It's amazing how the majority of people that we fear change so much that life is continually about change, and our higher self is always in our ear giving us guidance to make a change, whether it's breaking an old habit, whether it's moving forward in the direction of our dreams, etc. And there's a part of the ego mind, which Claire was mentioning about when we're living below the line, right? When we're living below the line, we are listening more to the ego mind, the fearful self, and we are so afraid of change. So we stagnate our life. And so I think that's the one of the seasons you mentioned is when they hurt enough. That's when change begins to happen, because life is going, okay, I've whispered in your ear a few times now to change, and now it's going to be smack on the ground to wake you up to create the change.
Yeah. Well, in the context there, Bill Bridges has done amazing work around this. He talks about endings, transitions, new beginnings. And he talks about the fact that people actually don't resist change at all, but we resist something. And he thinks and believes, and has got tons of research, we fear loss. And it doesn't matter what the loss is, loss of money, loss of status, loss of ability to do something. We fear that loss more than anything else. Well, then let's address the loss. You know, if you're moving and you've got a great job and you're moving off into something else, you're so thrilled, you're doubling your salary, forget about the fact that you're in a job, whole separate dialogue. But the kids don't want to go. And you're going to get, they got 4 boys, they're all living in one bedroom. Now they're going to each have a bedroom. There's a playroom. There's a recreation room. There's a place for them to play hockey outside. There's a pool, and there's a tennis court. There's a pickleball court. All of that's for the kids, and they don't want to go. What is that? Those are great changes. We should be able to do this. No, they're going to lose their friends. That's what's up. Well, then you got to figure out a way to deal with that, because that loss can actually be addressed. It's not easy, but that's very different than what's wrong with our children. We're giving them everything. Yeah, they don't want anything. They want their friends. So big deal. We look at loss. What, I'm going to lose my salary or my status. They're transferred me across the company, and I'm losing my status being in this smaller group to the large group. Wow, big upsets. So that's kind of a just knowing that, and you know that he's got 10 spectacular questions on how badly we sabotage ourselves because of that loss conversation. We're not facing it. We're not addressing it.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%, Bill. There's a quote, I can't remember who it's from, but it's like, there's nothing to lose in life. There's only truth to gain.
Yes. Yeah.
Stan, go ahead.
You don't have all your marbles, Bill?
No, I do not. I do not. Yeah.
I've just tried to be silly. So I used to be a very respected leader, you know, construction. I had several crews and small crews, big crews. But I found that I didn't have the passion for it. You know, that it wasn't my passion. I started losing interest in it, and then I was no longer effective, and I was no longer a good leader. So, but I found like it would got to be more babysitting than, you know, constructive leadership. With your presentation, I really like it. Your approach and your strategies, you know, for leadership. It was a very good presentation. You know, in the world out there, now, if we're talking Life Force Canada, that's a perfect approach where you're coming from. But, you know, 95% of the people that are out there in that workaday world, they go to work, and I don't know if that's on subject or not, but if
That is, it's totally on subject. Yep.
we take that into account, you know, people don't like what they're doing.
Mhm.
Yes.
True.
It might be that high. It's certainly true. By the way, when you finally tapered off and decided to be out of construction, how long ago was that? What years were you kind of playing in the construction game?
My background is organic farming, big family operation, and I had to get out of it because it got to be a little bit complicated. But we had trucking and we had all kinds of equipment on with the farming operation. So when I left there, I got back into utilities construction primarily.
Okay.
And I got into that about 15 years ago.
So over that time, there was a couple of factors that kicked in for you to start losing your passion for it.
It's all been debt slaves. So,
Yeah.
you know, back then, and that's the same as it is today. I mean, you know, the work conditions and everything have got better, but what I don't like about it today is there's way too many rules and regulations.
Yes, which guts leadership.
Yeah,
It's absolutely true.
totally.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
especially when you look at a rule. In fact, there's a good quote on this. When mores, M-O-R-E-S, when mores, rules, are
Yeah.
sufficient, laws are unnecessary. When mores are insufficient, laws are unenforceable.
exactly.
You know, we're going to close the border between the US and Mexico. We're going to put up a wall. Okay. You know, they should have talked to the Chinese. Chinese tried to do that with Mongolians. Didn't work.
Yeah.
Like, that's 5,000 years ago. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. Because that kind of a rule, it's not going to serve in the end because it's not an enforceable rule. So those kinds of challenges, you're facing them, certainly in the construction industry. It's actually hilarious in some ways. But
Yeah.
that context guts the worker because there's no pride in the workplace. There's no pride in what I'm accomplishing or what I'm doing. So yeah, I get why that would be a challenge for you.
Yeah, so but I definitely see your passion you know, in what you do. It's totally there, and good job. You know, my passion is like what Life Force Canada is all about, you know.
Perfect.
It's freedom,
Yes.
sovereignty, parallel societies, all these kind of things, organic food, everything that's wholesome and healthy and natural, and yeah, just free. I think freedom is a very, very powerful word.
It is, but we have to be careful with it. And here's why. Robespierre talked about this hundreds of years ago. If I say freedom to a priest or a revolutionary, they will go in different directions. So the key becomes, what do I mean by our freedom? What does that look like? And if my freedom to exist means you have to give up something for me to have that freedom, we're in trouble. So that's why that parallel society conversation, that's why we're not taking on anybody to try to disrupt the government. We're just saying, you know what? There are rules that you're supposed to operate and I'm supposed to operate under. Let's just operate under those, because when we do, we're golden.
So if Lifeforce Canada is recruiting, you know, more leaders and more of the 95% or whatever that percentage is out there that are not happy, how many school teachers are happy, you know, or doctors or lawyers? It's all about dollars. And not too many of them are happy. You know, they gotta get groceries for the family, they gotta pay the mortgage, right? So
Yep.
that's all they know. And so they're doing the best they can. And I mean, I've been there. We've
But
all
that
been there.
culture, Stan, that culture of that's all they know
Yeah.
is actually part of that game, because it doesn't take much for us to pull our head up and look forward and go, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's scary to make that call, but when you do, wow. Yeah, here's a quote. A world that plays out its discussions and issues on social media is not a world of substance, depth, texture, nuance, and quality. Just notice how much of what's going on, even in our worlds here, social media is playing a role that it should not.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge.
Thank you,
Me
Stan.
too.
That was great. I just want to share that many years ago, I was involved in the insurance industry. I was a senior claims adjuster, and I've been doing it for 14 years. And I had to have jaw surgery, and so I was away from work for a bit because I had TMJ issues. And then I was involved in a major car accident, and so I was off work for a little bit, but I came back and they fired me. And I was actually so grateful that they fired me, because I sat back and I realized, because I'd become spiritually aware, that this realm is massive and infinite. And I realized, well, what was I thinking when I was in this cubicle in this corporate corpse building downtown for 14 years and feeling dead inside? And of course, because it's not a nurturing, soul fulfilling environment. And to me, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it allowed me to expand into something brand new that I never thought that would ever happen. And one of the first things I did was take Toastmasters to learn how to speak in public. Because I had such a fear of speaking in public, expressing myself, and it changed my life in such profound ways. So I really honor you, Bill, in what you're doing. And Esther, go ahead. This has just been a great, great conversation.
Thank you. Sometimes when we think of the word leader, we have these impressions of, oh, I have to be standing in front of 100,000 people or 1,000,000 people, and I have to be, that's the role of leader in that kind of context. But I think we can all be leaders in simple, small ways. And it's one-on-one. I might be having a conversation with my friend Karen, or my other friend Karen, or my friend Dale Ann, or Lori of the Family Brown. How do I bring my essence to any conversation? To me, my heart, my authenticity, to me, that's the first step in being a leader. I love that Stan said, you know, he was a leader in a company, and that's fantastic. I'm sure various people in this wonderful group have been in leadership roles. But how do we embody leadership? With every breath we take, or, you know, when we stumble and then we get ourselves back up, that's taking leadership, etc. So it doesn't have to be this big thing of I'm going to be a leader in a huge context. It's even in my own personal circle. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Esther. Yes, self-leadership. How are we going to lead our lives to be more fulfilling and to feel more alive inside and to feel passionate about life, no matter what's going on out there in the world? Thank you, Esther. And yeah, I loved what Stan said, because passion is such a key word. I also want to remind everyone too, it's like if you look at Bob Proctor, I think he started as a public speaker at the age of 65, I think it was. I'm not too sure if that's correct, but it was in his later years. And so he started a brand new career. So it just goes to show that I do believe that as we are moving forward into this new earth, what we've been doing our whole entire lives may not be what we are doing 5 years from now or 3 years from now. I think that our soul and our higher self, creator, source is guiding us to where we're all meant to live in that joy that you're talking about, Esther, in that authentic expression of who we are. So yeah, thank you. Claire and Carol, go ahead.
The one thing that we've understood is that, and this comes from everything that we were talking about, Bill, when you lead from the heart, then you're a leader. And it also gives you the opportunity to make changes because your heart is telling you that what you're in is not working for you. But it's that leading from the heart thing first, in our experience, that has allowed us to make the changes that we've made as we've gone through life.
Yeah, that is so important. And I know some of us wrestle with that above the line conversation, but again, that workshop that I was in with Angeline Toth over on Xenia, she worked days to get the agenda together. And the first night, she just had this feeling that this needed to be different. And she tossed, except for meal time, everything else was tossed out of the agenda. And it was genius. And that she needed to do what she felt compelled to do, even after all the work she did. And one of the conversations we had around that was, don't be so attached to all the work you did when you need to change direction to serve the people. It's kind of cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
changing direction to serve people. Love it. Thank you, Claire and Carol. Thank you, Bill. This has been amazing. I look forward to having you present on more topics moving forward. I just also want to thank Karen Hanna for putting in the chat in regards to the Stand and Deliver Calgary, July 13th and 14th. The information is there as well. And Karen also put in the chat, the Sovereign Living Conference. It's so exciting to see people, men and women, signing up, because this is an opportunity for all of us to come together and meet in the real. Meet and hug and connect. We so need connection right now in so many different ways. Okay, let's just close our eyes for a moment. You're focusing on life force, energy. Breathing in to the count of 5 and then breathing out to the count of 5. We're slowing our breath down. And just tuning into your own inner leader. Everyone has one. We have our own inner leader, whether you want to call that your higher self. And just tuning into that part of you that is fearless. That part of you that is passionate and excited about the future. It's only you get to create the future that you want to experience, that you are here to experience and manifest as the powerful creator that you are. And as you begin to say yes to the changes that you know you need to make, and that can be a small, simple change that you know that you need to make, that's going to be a stepping stone on that path that you're on, that freedom path that you're on. And just allowing yourself to tune in to your heart, tune into that space within your chest and allowing yourself to see that ball of light inside of you, that ball of light that lives in your heart. And you might just see it as a flicker of a candle. You might see it as a sphere or a golden ball of light inside of you. That light inside of you is calling. That light inside of you is calling you to expand into your greatness, to release the fears, to release the self-doubt, and to let go of what other people think. Because you are a child of the universe and you are here as a unique, individualized expression of the God code. There is no one in this earth realm that is like you. No one. You are unique. You are special. You are a force to reckon with. You are a force for good. And you're here to allow that light to shine bright, to allow that light within your heart to grow and expand and grow and expand and keep growing and keep expanding. And as you do, you say, I trust myself. I trust my divine mind. I trust my experiences. I trust that you are being guided to where you are meant to be. And sometimes this can involve taking a risk, doing things you've never done before. Just keep focusing on your breath. And just saying to yourself, I'm releasing all resistance to change. I'm releasing all resistance. I'm releasing my fear of loss. I am fearless. I am free. And so it is. Thank you, everyone. You are divine. I am so grateful for all of you, our tribe, our family, our Life First Canada family. Lots of love, everyone. Together we rise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill and Esther. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Good night.